Good afternoon, guys. Welcome back to Historical Horses. I hope you're all well and you've had a good week. So this video today is a spin-off from last week's video. So last week we did about the army remount depots, and this week I wanted to talk about one particular remount depot. So let's get into it. It was actually, and I'll hopefully put them on the screen, these two paintings that started off my whole research for the army remount depots. They caught my eye instantly, one, because I think they're beautiful, so much so that I've actually thought, wouldn't mind them in my house. But it was the fact that it was women riding the horses. It was obviously work. You know, it wasn't just a lady going out for a leisurely stroll on her horse. You know, these were several women and they were riding horses and they looked like they were getting them fit. They were working them. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And, you know, nobody's got a riding hat on, so we know that it wasn't from recent times. And so I started looking more into it, and then I saw that they wrote, now, I don't know if it's Russley Park or Russley Park. I've heard people say it different ways. I'm going to go with Russley Park. I apologise in advance if that's incorrect. But I read in the description that it said Russley Park. So then I did a little quick Google, and that's how I got into researching, like I say, the remount depots, and now doing this spin-off video about the Russley Park remount depot. And it's special because it was run by women. So these two beautiful paintings were done by Lucy Kemp Welsh, and she was a fantastic artist. She was born in 1869 and died in 1958. And as I already said, these two paintings depict ladies working the army horses at Russley Park. Another thing that was quite exciting for me was finding out that actually Russley Park isn't a million miles away from me. It's near Lambourne, so it's in Wiltshire, near Lambourne. And yeah, it's you know, it's not on my doorstep, but it's certainly not that far away. And I have definitely seen, now I think I've definitely seen it from the motorway. In fact, I'm fairly sure I have. So that makes it more exciting. It makes it more exciting when you know where the place is. So the Russley Park house was a hunting estate, estimated from around the 1700s. I don't know if the current house, which I should have a picture on the screen of, is from the 1700s, but the estate has been around for a long time. And the stables built there were for racehorses, and this came in sort of the late 19th century. In 1915, the stables from the estate were sold to the Secretary of the State for the war. And the stud there also handed over two stallions, quite a few brood mares, and some young stock, with the intentions of actually breeding horses for war, but that never actually happened. Instead, it became a remount depot, especially for officers' horses. And these were horses that had either been to war, picked up injuries, or needed rest, or just needed bringing back into better health, or horses that were going to become officers' horses. So they were dealing with fairly nice horses, ones that probably were already well ridden and didn't mean they were in the best condition, but the quality of them would have been a little better. And their job at Russley Park was to get these horses healthy and fit so they could go back to war. And it's an ideal location there for getting horses fit. You're literally on the edge of the downs, you know, big rolling fields, ideal for horse fitness. And the reason I loved learning about Russley Park is because it was a remount depot totally run by women. And I think there was only about 3 of them in the whole country out of all the remount depots. Now, obviously, this is quite rare because before that time, women didn't run stable yards. You know, they would have ridden, but you wouldn't have found female grooms working on big yards or anything like that. So this was unusual. Now, it became a lot more common in World War I because obviously many of the young lads that were stable boys and grooms had to go to war, so women started doing the work. So through World War I, that really started to change. But still, it was very unusual to have a whole stable yard that was run by women. The only men was probably a blacksmith and the vet. The women at Russley Park who were helping to run the Remount depot were known as gentlewomen. So they were most likely farmers' wives or, fairly well-to-do women in the local area, women that could ride, who were very knowledgeable about horses, women that probably most likely hunted. So they would be good horsewomen. They'd know what they were doing. Russley Park could hold 100 horses, and over the course of it being a remount depot, they had 365 in. 308 of those horses went to war or back to war. It was Lady Mabel Birkbeck that ran the remount depot at Russley Park, and the head groom was Mrs. Ironside. What a great surname for a head groom. She sounds fierce, doesn't she? She sounds really fierce. Lady Mabel Birkbeck was the wife of Major General Sir William Birkbeck, which might be one of the reasons that there's actual film footage of Russley Park as a remount depot. And guys, you must go and watch this. I can't remember how long it is. I want to say it's like 7 minutes footage of the remount depot at Russley Park, because it's just extraordinary to watch. At one point, the women are either trying to get some medicine down a horse's throat, or they're trying to do something. They're trying to pour some sort of liquid down a horse's throat. And they've got a 2-prong pitchfork through the head collar, like up like that, so they can hold its head up in the air so they can pour the liquid down its throat. But the prongs are like stuck like that. I was thinking, oh my God, that poor horse. But hey, the horse wasn't going to move its head. So, that's like, good on them. They just got on with it. It shows some footage of them riding. You can see what they were wearing. The riding is quite interesting. Not that they're riding, the way the horses are going is quite interesting. But honestly, it's well worth a watch. I will write it in the comments or the description how to go and find that little bit of footage to watch. You must do it. Something else that I really loved from watching the film is you just got the real sense that these women just got on and did the job. And of course they had to, they were pulling their weight, they were helping the war effort, and they were doing a job. They wanted to get these horses fit and healthy so they could go back into war and help the men fighting out there. And also you got a real sense of the clothes that they wore. They had these sort of quite loose fitting shirts. I don't know what they called the breeches then. I'm sure I read somewhere that it was something like elephant ears breeches, because they were very wide. I've got a picture, I'll put it on the screen, very wide at the top, and then they sort of went tight just below the knee. Soft hats and scarves around your head, which I love seeing them in that style for that era. I wouldn't obviously recommend not wearing a riding hat, but that wasn't a thing back then. But just, that's why this film footage is just so important, to be able to see all those little details. I watched it so many times. You can imagine how excited I was to see it. I mean, there's no sound to it, but in some ways I love that even more. Now, this is a really personal opinion and quite a sexist thing to say, so don't come for me. But I wonder if, being an all-women's remount depot, and that we know these ladies working there were good horsewomen, whether the training was perhaps better than other remount depots. We know that they had a good record of sending horses back to war, rehabilitating them well. And in this period of time, we know that at some of the other remount depots, they were using soldiers that didn't have any horse experience. And I can imagine those soldiers perhaps being more heavy-handed with horses because they just didn't have the experience. Whereas these women, I just think they would have had a much calmer nature about them. But honestly, like I say, it's a very sexist opinion, so don't come for me. I'm sorry. I think personally, if I was in World War I and I had to do a job, this would have been a job I would have thrived in. An all-women's remount depot, I feel like the camaraderie between everybody, really wanting to work hard to help heal these horses. The only bit I'd have been absolutely useless at was when they had to return. It would have broken my heart. I'm not sure that bit I would have coped with quite so much, but I guess, you had to do your bit. But yeah, as jobs go, this one I feel like might have been the one for me. To have got to Russley Park, the horses would have actually been put onto a train, and there was a train station not that far away from it. So the women would have walked down to the train station, they would have collected the horses off of the train, they would have led them back to Russley Park. And these women were doing it all. They were mucking out, they were grooming these horses 3 times a day, they were exercising them, they were training them, they were giving them medicine, they were doing dressings, they were doing it all. They were running this as a top yard to rehabilitate these officers' horses. Now, sadly, the majority of the stables at Russley Park have now been turned into houses. And I should have a picture. I think this is all that's left. I mean, they were beautiful stables. This is all that's left. And I'm sure I read somewhere that literally just a Shetland pony lives in here. It's got very grand quarters. I'm glad there's a little bit of it left, but it's always a shame when lots of it turns into houses, but that's the way it goes, doesn't it? Another thing I recommend listening to if you really enjoy learning more about the Remount depot and especially Russley Park is if you Google it and put in BBC Sounds, there's like a 7-minute chat about Russley Park as well on there, which is well worth a listen to. So yeah, it's only a short and sweet video today, I think. I don't know how long I've been talking for, but I sort of felt like Russley Park needed its own vlog just because of the fact that it was all women and they did a fantastic job there, and also it's very local to me. So all those reasons, I thought, oh, I need to talk about this. I'm thinking now that I might have to do a sort of walk, because I'm pretty sure there's a footpath that runs quite near to it. So I'm going to have to go and do the walk or something so I can go past the site. That would be really interesting. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Next week, we will definitely move on to a whole different topic because we've obviously done a lot about World War I in the past few videos. So complete change of subject next week. Thank you so much for watching, guys.